What's up, guys? It's Andrew Pecoraro with PecksMetalPicks, and I'm here with...
Kyle Anderson from the Afterimage.
And what do you do, Kyle?
I am the singer of the band.
And you do both types of vocals, right?
That's right, yeah. The singing vocals and the screamed vocals as well.
Yeah, I think that'll surprise a lot of people because your cleans are pretty awesome, man.
Oh, thanks a lot.
I think they're probably remind a lot of people of like a little bit old school, like a Skylit Drive or like older era, and you don't hear too many vocals like that these days. So just want to make a note of that because I think it's really impressive that you do the screams and the cleans. But yeah, like we were talking while we were getting set up, I'm sure today's been pretty crazy for you. Could you give maybe a little insight into what it's like to be a band that releases an album on a major record label? Like, what has today looked like for you?
It's been pretty crazy trying to catch up on all the messages, texts, and emails from the label and whatnot, but it's been overwhelmingly positive. We're trying to engage with a lot of the listeners that are checking out the record and that might have questions and whatnot through outlets like Reddit and Facebook as well, and I'm just having a great time, and I think that everybody's having a lot of fun checking out the record, and it makes me happy.
That's good to hear, man. It seems like the reception so far I think it's been really positive.
I think so, and I didn't know what to expect, but it's pretty humbling, and I'm very stoked that people are on the same page.
So, starting off with a little bit of more, on the lighter side of the questioning, what is your personal favorite song on Eve, and what do you think your fans' favorite song on Eve will be?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's many reasons why I like each song. I do have a few favorites, but if I had to pick one specifically, I would probably go with Secrets, I think, because it's got one of my favorite choruses on the record, and I think that it's something a little outside of what the Afterimage has kind of previously done. It doesn't kind of have one of those out of left field breakdowns to it or anything like that. It's pretty different overall, and I just think the chorus is a lot of fun to sing, and it's just overall one of my favorite songs off the record because of that.
And what do you think your fans are? Typically, what do you think a fan favorite song will be?
I'm seeing a lot of people being psyched on Floodgates and Mirrors, and of course Wrath, the last single that we put out, because it was kind of a throwback to our first EP, Formless, which is a very heavy, more along the spectrum of deathcore, I guess you could say, if you had to kind of pin it to a genre. Still very technical and had those melodic aspects, but I think a lot of people were surprised to see that we would go back and kind of pay tribute to that EP. So.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talk about Mirrors so far. Wrath is definitely up there for me, and we'll get into it a little bit later about the progression of the Afterimage and some of the sound changes as you guys have grown up. I mean, when did Formless come out? That was like 2014?
It was actually 2012 that Formless came out.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like I've been listening to you guys for at least 4 or 5 years. So yeah, there's been a lot of progression, but I think Wrath was a really cool throwback to a little bit of the older sound. And lyrically, even though Eve might not be quite as heavy as some of the earlier stuff, lyrically I think it still has some dark moments for sure. And
definitely,
what sort of drove you to take those sort of dark issues on in this album and face some of those things?
Well, I think at the end of the day, kind of the more abstract, kind of spacey and kind of a little more weird concepts, they're kind of not something that I connect with anymore. I was super into that type of vibe when I was younger. At this point, I'm all about just being real and writing about feelings that every single person is going to feel and understand. And we all go through hardships. We all go through trials and tribulations. And I think a lot of people they're either scared or embarrassed to talk about certain feelings they might have, whether it's depression or feeling sad or feeling some type of sorrow. They don't want to talk about it, and they want to bottle it up inside and try and be I don't want to say like manly about it or whatnot, but I think I just want to kind of let the listener know that it's okay to talk about these things and they're not alone when they experience feelings of depression, anxiety, sorrow, sadness, those type of things. It's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to, rely on your friends and your family and people that are close to you when you're going through these type of things.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I definitely agree that, especially for guys, there's sort of the stereotype that you
exactly
keep it all on the inside. And yeah, totally agree with that. And I know you guys recently did a Ask Me Anything on Reddit. I went through that a little bit because I wanted to see if there were any good questions that could use a bit of a follow-up. And
right.
And I saw one of your responses on Reddit that talked about Eve sort of dealing with feelings that people feel when they're in a first serious relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So many of us, we kind of have like a first serious relationship, whether when we're really younger. Some people might wait, and in my case, my first serious relationship, honestly, wasn't until I was about 23 years old. I had, partners in the past before that that were kind of just very short-lived. But this kind of discusses the type of thing you might go through, especially when you have a partner that may kind of share similar, mental health issues as well, and how you might kind of approach that. And sometimes it's going to work out, and sometimes it isn't. And it does touch on kind of the positive aspects of a relationship, but it definitely touches on when things can unfortunately go south, and how you might deal with that, and what you might feel. Definitely kind of focuses on the negative side a little more, with depression, sorrow, and a lot of confusion. So the record is kind of trying to make sense of the whole situation and what has happened, and kind of feeling almost betrayed in a sense. And then towards the end of the record, then you start to come to that conclusion where you realize that maybe this wasn't something that was meant to be, but you've learned a lot in the end.
Yeah, sort of at the end of things, you're still grateful for the experiences, and you learned a lot about yourself and
Exactly.
what you need. Do you think that there are any themes, or maybe a song in particular that has sort of like a background story that might be harder for viewers to sort of get the first time around, or even if they're listening at like a surface level the first couple times through? Do you think that they'll miss any themes or any deeper inspirations that you had when writing some of these songs?
Yeah, I can give you an example, actually.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I try and keep track of social media and reviews and kind of what people are thinking about the record, because I think that's honestly important, because at the end of the day, the band's only as big as the people that support it. And I really think that people's opinions are important when they're constructive too. There was one review, I can't remember exactly what website it was, but the title track Eve kind of has a little bit of a phone call at the beginning that occurs, and that's actually me in the call. And funny enough, one of my friends, Anna Maria, that I work with, she has a really good phone voice, so I walked over to her desk. I was like, "Hey, you want to be on my record?" It's a pretty funny story, but anyway.
That's awesome.
She was totally down, and I thought she killed it. But that's kind of when I was reading the review, I noticed that they had mentioned that the female voice, the female actor, was kind of like put together and knew what she wanted, but the male felt self-important and like that they were self-deserving of that phone call. And I was kind of, I just thought that was kind of funny because I guess at the end of the day, I tried to keep it a little more open. I wasn't super specific about all the songs. I just tried to write it in a way that people could relate to in their own fashion. But that's kind of the complete opposite of what the situation actually was. In the real scenario, it was difficult to even have a conversation with that partner, and it was something that you went through a lot, and you finally had that opportunity, and you had to kind of just let them know that I really wanted to speak with you, and I hadn't been able to for so long, and it's frustrating. It's also it hurts. So that's kind of where that's coming from. So it's very funny to see the perspective of another listener. They got the exact opposite of what it was meant to portray.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple bands.
Just a little example.
No, yeah, that's great. Those sort of Easter egg stories I think are really cool, especially for listeners to get a little bit of insight. Especially, I know some bands like to leave the lyrics or whatever in their songs open to the listener interpretation, because as soon as you define it, then that's the only thing that it can mean. But if you let the listeners interpret it their own way, they can connect with it in ways that you didn't even intend for.
Exactly.
But I think, in this case, it is helpful to set the record straight and to really show the purpose of something that is the title track, and some people might just think is like an interlude, but really that one has a deep meaning. It's close to your heart.
Oh, of course. I mean, I've said in a couple other interviews that one was honestly pretty tough to track. I had no issues kind of going back and reliving some of those situations, but that one was tough. So it's like, it doesn't bother me that they had that opinion. I think it's actually pretty cool, but it's just it's kind of funny. So I just thought I would kind of set the record straight, I guess, and give you a good example and
totally.
How people might perceive things maybe incorrectly.
Yeah, continuing sort of on the vein of listener perceptions and just their opinions. Jump into the next question, and you can totally tell me I'm, taking it the wrong way here, but I get the sense that on Eve, the songs are meant to be listened to together. Like, the album as a whole is more of a cohesive unit, and what I mean is a lot of them sort of explore a certain sound a little bit deeper than the Afterimage has beforehand. I feel like some of the earlier Afterimage material, you guys fit a ton of different sounds into every single song, and I feel like on Eve, you explored certain sounds a little deeper in some songs, and weren't trying to cram all the elements into every single song. Do you think that is sort of accurate?
I think that's 100% accurate.
Okay.
So I'll just kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, great.
So we had this weird transitional phase where we were kind of just pumping out singles for a while. I don't know if you were around kind of checking the band out at that point. We released The Seeking, Pathogen, Onyx, and The Unseen.
Yeah.
So, and all those songs had like 10 different genres packed in together. Just basically everything we thought was awesome, and we tried to make it our own, in a sense. So they became their own kind of pieces, their own separate entities, I guess you could say. And our manager at the time said that rather than having all these singles, we should try and compile it into a record. So that's kind of where Lumiere came from. So Lumiere was not planned at all in terms of the way that the song should be formulated and kind of put together. And we tried to make it work as an afterthought by including the more electronic aspects, and we had it mixed again by another producer at that point because the original producer was having a child, so he wasn't available, which a lot of people don't know. They were kind of confused as to why the productions and sound changed. But that previous producer, Jordan Valeri, he kind of had a really excellent idea on what the band wanted and what we wanted out of our sound. Just kind of unfortunate timing issue. But anyway, going back to the point, with Eve, there's a couple of things that made it flow the way it did. The first thing was that we were having a new member write the majority of the guitar riffs. So Asher Ali, he mixed the record and he also wrote the guitar. And I was heavily involved in the transitions in all the songs, the type of riffs I wanted to be played, the vibe of the songs. So I was almost producing the instrumental in a sense, and he was coming up with the actual riffage. And unfortunately, can't play guitar that well, so we're limited in that sense. But we did that. But also, one thing that I think the listeners will notice is that this record's a lot more vocal centric. We didn't sacrifice any of the cool guitar work or anything like that. We kind of made a place for it in the song that wasn't going to take away from specifically the singing vocals. I was fine with having cool licks and grooves and whatnot over the screaming and stuff because I think it suits that type of feel. But I didn't want to have too much going on when the choruses hit. So each song has its own vibe, but A, lyrically it connects, and B, instrumentally I felt like the way that we arranged all these songs made sense logically. So yes, it was a lot more thought out,
Okay.
whereas Lumiere wasn't really, it was just kind of an afterthought trying to put everything together to get that released out because management thought it was the best option for us. But that's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, got it. And set the record straight for me. I probably honestly should have been straight about this before I started this. I've been listening to Lumiere a lot, ever since first off, since it came out, but, especially since I knew that we were going to be talking. And did you guys originally release it through Famine Records and then re-release it later on?
So no, Famine Records had released our very first EP and all of the singles until Onyx. So Onyx was completely self-released. We had actually, it's kind of funny, we've had a lot of members in this band due to various reasons. School, some people weren't pumped on touring. Some people wanted to play different genres of music. There's a couple members who we just kind of didn't mesh well, on an individual basis with all the guys in the band. But essentially, so the earlier material, Formless, all the way up to Unseen, was written by a guitarist by the name of Alex Lapano. So he's kind of the guy who's responsible for the Afterimage sound in general. And at that point, we had, this is around 2013, we acquired our guitarist, who's now back in the band, Michael Leo Valeri.
Mm-hmm.
And him and I, we lived together back in 2013 in Toronto. And him and I wrote Onyx together back in 2013. And Follow, and he did all the electronic work on Lumiere. And we also had Sam Jacobs, which a lot of people are aware of because he was kind of like the face on YouTube, doing the guitar playthroughs, doing the Onyx guitar playthrough and whatnot. And he was doing a lot of stuff, kind of speaking with fans. And a lot of people, because they saw him on YouTube and whatnot, they thought he actually coined the sound and was responsible for the writing. That's actually not correct. It was Alex and Leo who did the majority of the writing. Sam wrote the song Reach, and he also wrote a couple of riffs on Onyx itself. And he did track the guitars on those songs, but he didn't write them for the most part.
Okay.
So in terms of the Famine Records and the kind of transition towards Tragic Hero, basically we had those singles out, a bunch of them, all the way back to The Seeking and The Unseen. So we wanted to put out a record that was a little bit more melodic, with a hint of the heaviness here and there. So we opted to not include Pathogen within that. But our manager at the time was Jesse Cash, who's the singer and guitarist of Era. And he mentioned that we needed a solid release out that we could generate some numbers, which would be beneficial towards management opportunities and getting on tours and whatnot. So then we had the idea to kind of create Lumiere, which was going to be kind of a transitional EP to jump into our next full length. And unfortunately, the band went on hiatus after we kind of released that and went on tour shortly after. But that was kind of the idea behind it, just to kind of put everything together so it was digestible to maybe a newer listener.
Okay, got it. Thanks for clearing up the history on that. I think a lot of people appreciate that, especially the insights into who has helped write over the course of time and how that's factored into the sound change. Going back a little bit to talking about Eve and the songs on it and how each song sort of explores certain elements a little bit more deeper than others, I think some of the songs might be a little bit less technical than what fans of the Afterimage might typically expect.
Right.
Still definitely has other areas that are just as deep. But as you guys have gotten older, is there a little bit less of an emphasis on trying to shred 24/7?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. There's a couple of reasons why I would agree with that. The first reason is that I think some of the greatest songs that we're aware of, all the songs that we can sing and we know all the words to, there's something about them that's magical, and it's not related to impressing people because you played something that was insane. And that's not to say that that's bad to play something insane. I think every instrument should have their time to shine, and that's what we try to do with Lumiere. And I think you'll see that. We never really had a lot of guitar solos, but there's a bunch of guitar solos on. Sorry, that's what we try to do with Eve. My apologies. There's a bunch of guitar solos on Eve. There's a lot more cool drum fills and more ghost notes and just interesting cymbal hits and whatnot that weren't previously there. And obviously the vocals are more upfront. But we tried to make the album interesting from a perspective of dynamics, and just kind of show that there's more to a song than just kind of going insane on every single instrument, and that sometimes you need the song to breathe a little bit. So it's just kind of pushing our writing to the next level, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I heard similar things from. I talked to Reflections a couple years back, right when they put out the Color Clear. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but
yeah, it's an excellent album.
Yeah, before that, they were super shreddy. They had crazy playthroughs and really focused on that. But it was really interesting talking to Jake about the Color Clear because at one point he sort of talked about when you're constantly shredding on the guitar, it's tough to create like a certain atmosphere sometimes, or to focus on the deepness of other areas. And I just thought that was really interesting to think about. You know, more isn't always better. Sometimes, like you're saying,
For sure.
It can be better to let the song breathe and actually highlight different parts than how quickly you can play, and that kind of stuff. So, really interesting to hear you say that too. I'm going to move on to talking about your vocals.
All right.
So one signature of the Afterimage has been the contrast between the low screams and the higher pitch cleans. Kind of talked about in the beginning, you're the one who performs both of those, which I think is super impressive. Personally, I feel like the higher pitch cleans, you know, being contrasted with the lower screams is sort of an element from like 2010 to like 2012. I'm thinking like old school, a Skylit Drive, or like old era.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that that sound has fallen out of favor because, you know, absolutely the Afterimage has found, you know, a place in people's hearts and people still want that sound. But as the scene has evolved in the last, you know, 6 years since you've put out your first EP, have you felt any pressure to change up the type of vocals that you do?
Yeah, I mean, when I was trying to think of how to phrase. Okay.
I'm sorry if the question is a little unclear. I guess, like, really the meat of... All right, yeah. The meat of the question without, like... I mean, I really don't want to be, you know, catch you off guard or be offensive here, but just that style of singing has almost, you know, fallen out of popularity. But you guys have found a place for it. But have you felt pressure to change that at all?
So when it comes to the singing, that's honestly just my vocal range when I sing. I'm not trying to jump into a stupidly high register. That's just where I'm comfortable singing. I can sing lower as well. You can hear it, when you listen to like the title track. I'm singing a much lower register at the beginning of that track. But one thing I didn't explore as much because I wasn't super confident in this vocal style, but I can now kind of like scream to pitch. So you're going to hear that on the next record. So I'm going to play with that because I know that's something that a lot of people are stoked on these days. Kind of the more aggressive type of singing, more like your Chester from Linkin Park, for example, the kind of singing that he did.
Yeah, I think
he also had a similar range to me, though, in terms of when he sung softly. So I think that you can kind of combine the two, but also the contrast between, like you said, like the lower screaming and the higher singing. That's kind of indicative of the type of person I am. I'm historically, I've never been a person that kind of knows a healthy medium. I'm always kind of a person of extremes. So I think it makes sense for when you kind of, if you know me as a person, I'm kind of one way or the other way, and it's always those two extreme points. So I think it's just me. That's just me in the form of art or music, just expressing myself. So yes, there will definitely be more singing styles on the new record. Also, Leo's going to be singing more on the next record. He didn't sing at all on this album, but he's got a really good voice. Kind of he's in the lower register. Maybe if you had to compare it, I'd say something like the tone of Dallas Green or something like that from Alexis on Fire.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be some dual singing and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, it's just kind of how I've expressed myself and kind of what I would want to hear. We just kind of write the stuff that we would want to hear or want to play. That's just how we've always been.
Yeah, totally, man. Thanks for. I know that's kind of a wacky question. It's just
not at all.
It's something I've always wondered about, and but yeah, totally makes sense, and appreciate the honesty. Sort of talking about other bands, and I've seen a lot of people make comparisons between the Afterimage and other bands. Some of them more warranted than others because you just existed before some of the bands that they compare you to. But
Ocean's 8 Alaska, yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw that on Reddit and I was just like, oh man, this guy, he doesn't. Poor question asker just did not really know what he was getting into. But maybe set the record straight of what bands do influence you guys. I've seen, people say Era, Northlane, Invent, Animate. I've even seen people say the Tony Danza Tapdance Extravaganza for some of your older stuff. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, none of us ever listened to Era. I heard a couple of songs by Era, and I thought it was cool because they had the singing vocals that were similar to like Circa Survive and Seocean and stuff like that, or Seosin as most people say. And that was cool to me, but it was mostly because of that. I didn't really listen to them because they were cool and progressive and whatnot. I guess that wasn't really my thing back then. But our actual influences might kind of make a little more sense when you hear them. Yeah, Tony Danza would definitely be one. We all grew up listening to like Danza 2.
Dude, that's so fucking sick. Oh my god, Danza is so good, and I'm sad that so few people know about them these days.
Yeah, that's
such a good band.
Super frustrating to me, to be honest, because it's even before Josh Travis was in the band, that was an incredible act even back then.
Yeah.
And obviously he's now taken that sound and made it his own.
Yeah, he did really good things for Amir on their last album.
Oh yeah, that's the best thing that ever happened to Amir.
Oh, absolutely.
Other than I guess it was their first full length, which is like one of my favorite full length records of all time.
Yeah.
Side note there. But yeah, we would have. I think the obvious one that a lot of people say is Dance Gavin Dance. I've been listening to Dance Gavin Dance since their EP. since their demos even. And I have their first record, whatever I say is Royal Ocean. I bought it when back in the days of Pure Volume. I'm dating myself here. And MySpace. That's just honestly that's probably my favorite band, if I'm totally honest. And then we'd have, like the original guitarist Alex, who kind of coined the sound. He was super into math rock. So he was into like bands like Jaga, Jazzist, and kind of like we did have some Circa Survive influence in there, and I guess they're not as math rocky, but
I mean, I think Danza is a really good example of math rock, or at least really weird time signatures, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously like bands like This Town Needs Guns was a big influence. And The Fall of Troy is another big influence. So maybe not so much the modern kind of progressive metalcore bands, because those didn't really exist at the time. And not to say that they're not cool or anything like that, because when we mentioned Ocean's 8 Alaska, I listened to their new album and it's incredible. I think they really got something special going on, and I can understand why some newer listeners might compare us, because we have kind of those sporadic moments, and the songs are faster paced, and obviously we have like the contrast between the different vocal styles, because they do have a higher pitch singing as well. So I can see that, but I think we have a different approach to the progressive metalcore sound. And then in terms of the heavy stuff, yeah, we're gonna have Ion Dissonance in there for sure. That's a big influence. Another Canadian band. They're from Quebec. And then, of course, we're going to have Meshuggah. So that's a hands down influence there.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I was going to talk about Dance Gavin Dance. I feel like one of the places you could see the Dance Gavin Dance influences the most is in the guitar work on Lumiere. On Eve, I don't feel like it only came out today.
It's not as much there.
Right, okay.
It's not as much there on Eve, because I think Asher didn't really listen to that kind of stuff. Okay. That was more Leo and Alex. Because like I said, Alex was huge into the math rock stuff. And that's where the like kind of the tapping leads came from, and the cool, clean, groovy guitars, and the way things harmonize and whatnot. That was Alex's math rock influence. And Leo latched onto it pretty quickly because he was also a fan of math rock stuff. And he's just honestly a quick learner as well. But Asher comes from more of a progressive sphere and a mindset. And he's like one of his favorite bands is Periphery, obviously. So you're going to hear more of that type of influence on Eve. Maybe not so much the math rock stuff, but there's hints of it there, here and there. So,
yeah. One side note question, since Dance Gavin Dance is one of your favorites, what do you think between Tillian and Johnny Craig? I think I go Tillian.
It depends on what you think is better. So. That's a tough question, because in terms of passion and delivery and uniqueness, I'd probably go Johnny Craig. But in terms of vocal melody, structure, consistency, and overall tone, I'd probably go Tillian, because Tillian is an excellent writer. Whereas Johnny, I feel like he just kind of released his passion kind of on the spot almost sometimes. There's like on their first record, he honestly was freestyling a lot of that stuff that ended up on the album, from a bunch of interviews that I saw. So that's impressive to me. But I think Tillian, the way that Tillian structures his melodies and the notes that he picks, and especially on the newer stuff, oh geez, like he's a mastermind. So I guess I would agree with you. Overall, I'd say Tillian is better. But I do like the raw talent of Johnny Craig in the context of Dance Gavin Dance. I'm not a huge fan of the Slave stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not either.
And I think Amorosa's first record with him was pretty cool. There was a couple of good songs, but I think that he fit best in Dance Gavin Dance personally, just because there were so many good things going for that band, on top of the fact that they had an excellent singer in Johnny Craig. So
yeah, definitely. I think my favorite thing about Tillian that he seems to be exploring more is sort of his like harsh, clean singing, where it's like getting a little bit more strained. Anyway, I think
Yeah,
that's
the grit in there. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
yeah, I
'Cause
think
he has a
that's
very
pretty cool.
soft. He is not a soft, but like he has a very smooth tone in his voice, and I think it's impressive that he can kind of take it to that next step and add that grit and add that aggression when he wants to.
Yeah. Okay. So sort of, I don't want to say this, but sort of leeching off the Reddit AMA questions where I just thought it was really cool and wanted to have follow-up things about.
All right.
I found out that you do the artwork cover for the Afterimage, like you do the album covers.
Yeah. Yes, I've been doing the artwork ever since. I didn't do the formless artwork. That was a gentleman by the name of Daniel Wagner, or D-Dub Designs, as many may know him. He's done a lot of stuff that people probably have in their homes. Worked with some of the biggest bands like Tesseract and Structures and all kinds of big bands if you look at his portfolio, and even Northlane. And we hired him because he was kind of the guy at the time, and I had known him from back in the MySpace days. He did a MySpace layout for my very first band. Funny enough.
Yeah, how cool.
But in terms of the artwork, I just kind of it was not so much trying to save money or anything like that. I was just kind of passionate about graphic design, and it's something I've been kind of toying with ever since I was in high school, and just kind of making graphics for various like gaming teams I was on and stuff like that. So I have a lot of Photoshop experience, over a decade worth, and so when it came to Eve, it is a little more simple of a cover, and we have received some people kind of scratching their heads about why we would go such a simple route with the album cover, and honestly, it's because the album has a theme to it, and it's completely portrayed within the cover. So I actually hired a good friend of mine. Her name is Jordy Clark. Known her for forever, since probably like 2009 or something crazy like that. And she's got a studio up here in Toronto. And she had worked with a model by the name of Vanessa DiStallo, and she had the exact look that I wanted. We just kind of shot, and I kind of framed everything how I was envisioning it in the liner notes and all the different panels and on the cover and whatnot. And so literally everything in the album, including the textures, is completely custom. There's nothing that's you could download off Google or anything like that. It's all with photos that we took to create that artwork.
That's super cool, man. I feel like that. I mean, it's just another level of personalization to the album. You know, another touch that you get to affect.
Yeah, definitely.
So a little bit earlier, you mentioned that you already have an idea of how the next album is going to sound. Keeping in mind that you just released Eve today, I think it's interesting. You know, you already have the path for the future laid out. What should fans expect in the future?
So I think that some fans, they're kind of going to see what we're going to do with Eve. So one thing that you notice compared to Lumiere is that the structure of the song is a little more linear. It's a little more, I guess you could say, a classic song structure, maybe even pop song structure, kind of having the various verses and choruses, bridge, outro, that kind of a thing. So that's what we're going to go for, because I think that this. Number one, I'm getting a bit older. I'm going to be 28 this year. So, it's not that I don't like metal or anything like that. I do. But I want to make it into something that maybe we can grab some people from the outside world and get them into what's going on here. And I think the way to do that is by making songs digestible. Not kind of sacrificing artistic integrity. I'm not about selling out in the sense of just kind of dropping what you were completely and kind of adhering to what you think the status quo might be, but just kind of incorporating what you've built into a package that it can be delivered to different demographics. So that's going to be a focus more. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more vocal heavy. There's still going to be screaming, but it's going to be a lot less. It's going to be utilized for the purposes of dynamics. And we're going to take more of a top-line vocal approach. So we're going to really work with a few different producers on top of myself writing the melodies to really get the best out of the choruses and all the verses and whatnot. And also, we're going to take a big step towards groove and feel, and more of that Dance Gavin Dance, more of that math rock, more of that kind of you just kind of want to dance to it kind of feel, you know what I mean? But there'll definitely still be heavy parts. We're not going to throw that out the window. But it's going to be a little bit more of a melodic approach, groove in there, and kind of more vocal centric.
Do you think the current fans will be able to get on board with it?
I think they will. I think they will. If they like Eve, they're going to be able to like this, because it's not going to be that far off. It's going to make sense. And we're working on a single actually already. I don't know when it's going to get dropped, but we want to kind of have that as a precursor to where kind of things are going. And I think it'll make sense, because I don't want to alienate existing listeners at all. The band wouldn't be where it is right now without the listeners that are currently there. And I am not a big fan of when bands completely drop everything that, what made them, and jump into some crazy new territory. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to take aspects of the band and kind of bring them to the next level and hone in on something a little more specific.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't pull like a Suicide Silence, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think you'll be in better shape than they are right now. Fuck, dude, I just saw they're like opening for Attila, which, like, nothing against Attila, but like in what universe would Suicide Silence have ever opened for Attila in the past? It's pretty wild.
Yeah,
I feel like they definitely have to be feeling the backlash of their fans. That's the only reason I can come up with about why they would be opening for them.
I mean, I think for them, this is their life, and sometimes you get to a point, I think they're all older dudes, they're probably all in their 30s, most of those guys. So I can maybe understand why they maybe don't want to keep doing the deathcore stuff and whatever. I maybe would have met it halfway a little more if I was them, but I mean, I don't know what's in their head and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, just to give you some background on Suicide Silence, I've literally got a framed picture of Mitch right beside me where I'm sitting right now. So, a big time old school Suicide Silence fan. So I think that was a little bit of a bummer to me, but I can kind of, as band guy, understand maybe that they wanted to play some stuff that they were more pumped on playing every night. It just didn't maybe go over as well as they thought it would.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, you get bands like Parkway Drive who sort of move away from the metalcore sound eventually. I feel like a lot of the really big bands have done that. Even Crown the Empire, who's a smaller band, has, gone closer to more of an alternative rock sort of sound. But anyway, not to get too off track, but I did go.
No worries.
I did go to the Suicide Silence memorial show in California.
Oh my goodness! So you saw that? You saw the Phil Bozeman?
Yeah.
The infamous Phil Bozeman.
Yep, Phil Bozeman.
Big Chocolate.
Dude, Big Chocolate was hands down the best person of the night. That guy is unbelievable live. And it's crazy, a lot of people don't know, like, Disfiguring the Goddess and all of that stuff that he does, but that was probably the most impressive one of the night. I thought Eddie was such a bad pick for them. They had so many... Even Ricky Hoover, who was in Suffocate, would have been a lot better, even though I think he was straight edge, which probably wouldn't have meshed well with them, but yeah, I don't know.
I think maybe they realized that they weren't going to go that deathcore route, so it's probably why they picked him.
I think so too.
But like even in All Shall Perish, he was incredible in All Shall Perish.
He was,
in the context of that stuff.
He was, which makes me think that he was just ready to, like, that Eddie was also ready to abandon deathcore, and
yeah, I think they were friends I think they were pre-existing friends. I could be talking out of my ass, but that's
no. I'm pretty sure you're right. I'm almost certain that they were friends before. So, anyway,
they put out that record. What was it? You Can't Stop Me or something like that, and it was still kind of deathcore, and it sold pretty well.
Yeah,
and then they came out of left field with the almost like new metal.
Yeah, man, the thing.
Deftones, maybe not even Deftones.
That's what they were trying to go for.
Korn, Deftones, kind of like maybe 9 Inch Nails even at some points.
I mean, that's what they're trying to go for, and I just felt like they handled the transition so poorly. Like, in one of the interviews, they basically said, yeah, all of our fans are going to hate this, and we know that, but, like, screw that. Like, screw you guys, we're doing it anyway. Which, like, I understand it's their career, and I've said this about a couple of different big bands recently. Like, it is your career, you can do whatever you want, but your fans are not obligated to continue supporting you, and if you abandon everything that they liked about you, then you're left with a Facebook page that has like 2 million likes, but it's actually just people hating on everything you do. And, you know, that's not a great spot to be in either.
Oh, yeah, agreed. I think that, you know, you do have to have artistic integrity, and you can introduce things that maybe you're more comfortable with as an artist to play every single night. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's like a day job. You got to go and play those songs 5 days, 6 days, 7 days a week, every single night when you're on tour. And, you know, if you're playing stuff that you hate, I can get why you might want to make an absolute change from the ground up. But I think you got to understand that not only is a band a creative outlet, but it's also kind of a business as well. And when you've established a fan base, you have your market. Your market isn't going to be too inviting on a sound that generationally they don't understand. A lot of the fans of Suicide Silence don't know about Korn and 9 Inch Nails, and
yeah,
and
totally.
They weren't alive, and if they were alive, they were little kids, so they didn't experience that. And you know, like I said, the guys in Suicide Silence might be a little bit older, so they're gonna play stuff that maybe they were trying to appeal to an older audience, but it didn't really hit the mark. But they kind of forgot about their fans. I don't want to put words in their mouth, like you know, or anything like that. But that's kind of the way that I see it. I think that, you know, the fans should be just as important to you as, you know, your own opinion on and what you want to hear and whatnot. To me.
Yeah, totally agree. So, switching on to our last topic. You recently made, well, I don't know how recently you made it, but in 2018 so far, you have put out 3 singles under a band called Brand of Sacrifice.
That's right.
Maybe, do you want to say anything about that before I ask any questions?
Yeah, I'll just kind of give the listeners, maybe I'll give the listeners a little bit of a background of what it is.
Yeah, sure.
And we can go into it so they have a little bit more context. So, Brand of Sacrifice, it's kind of hard to put it into a genre, but I guess if you wanted to say it's a deathcore band, with kind of those slam and brutal death metal elements.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's based upon my favorite manga, which is called Berserk. So all the themes and the lyrics, they are derived from the story of Berserk, and I touch on a few of the different characters. It's kind of just like a fun outlet for me to just kind of go nuts with the vocals and just kind of talk about stuff and have a very loose type of approach to writing music. Again, it's just fun overall to do. But that's kind of what the band is, just to give you some background.
And Michael Valeri, or Valeri, not sure how to say his last name,
Valeri, yeah,
Okay.
Valeri's right.
Michael Valeri, he's the guitarist in the Afterimage, and he's helping you out with it?
Yeah, so Leo and I, like I said earlier, that we used to live together back in Toronto, and he's the guy that's responsible for the electronic aspect of the Afterimage, especially on Lumiere. He did the intro of the self-titled track Lumiere. He did, Without You, and a lot of those transitions on the record were Leo. He also was the guy responsible for the song Onyx, which is arguably our biggest song at this point. That was Leo that wrote that song. A couple of riffs were added by Sam, but Leo was the mastermind behind that. And he also wrote Follow. And he actually came from a technical death metal background. He was in a band called Ascariasis, which was pretty popular online for a little while back in 2012, 2013 type thing. So he can shred. But he's understood that he's more interested in the production side of things and creating songs and in any kind of genre. So he's done stuff in hip hop, R&B, metal, death metal, hardcore, any kind of genre. He's interested. He wants to learn the inner workings of it and create a song. So the guy has infinite levels of talent. And him and I, we just connect on a level. It's kind of hard to explain, but I don't even have to really tell him what I want, and he already knows what I want him to do. It's kind of weird in that sense, but it's awesome because the last single that we put out through Brand of Sacrifice called Casca, we literally wrote that I tracked the vocals in an hour, and he tracked and mixed. I think the whole song took us maybe 6 hours to get to the point of an idea to a mastered releasable product.
Wow. So
that's just the way we work together. Now we wouldn't be able to do that with Afterimage. There's a lot more thinking that goes to Afterimage. But I mean, Casca is a very crazy song. It's just something that it is. I guess both of us are very familiar with what would go into it, especially him coming from that technical death metal background. So it's just, we don't even have to think about it. It just comes out.
And you guys came up with the idea to make Brand of Sacrifice were you hanging out one day and just said, hey, we should give this a shot? Or, what led to the creation?
I was kind of inspired by some of those other internet bands like Shadow of Intent, which kind of has that Halo influence.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to do something, but more in the anime or manga realm, because I haven't seen anybody mess with that a little bit. I think that to me, the story of Berserk, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I've always made the joke that Berserk is like the death metal in the manga world. So I thought it would make sense to have a death metal or deathcore band that kind of showcased the themes of that story overall.
And I really like that you added in. I was going to say earlier when you were talking about Brand of Sacrifice being deathcore, I was going to say slash a little bit of slam, and then you went on to say it yourself. And dude, I think that's so killer. I think slam is a genre that's about to blow up right now, especially
Definitely.
with deathcore, when you have bands like Angel Maker, Oceano, their new style, Night in Texas, all of those bands getting crazier and crazier deathcore stuff. I think slam is really about to explode. And I feel like I never would have guessed, never ever, after listening to the Afterimage, that you would be busting out basically slam gutturals and pig squeals. I mean, man, there's a couple of parts on there that sound a little bit like Dickie Allen from Infant Annihilator, and I literally wrote here Ben Dewar from Shadow of Intent. There's a couple parts that, you could tell me it was them and I'd probably believe it. So these style of vocals, is this something new that you recently learned how to do and you want to make some songs, or have you had it in your pocket the whole time?
I've honestly had it in my pocket the whole time. When we would practice and stuff like that, I would always make jokes and just do gutturals, and I've always kind of been a fan of the disfiguring the goddess type stuff.
Yeah.
I throw that on going to the gym and whatnot, and it's I kind of consider that lifting music.
Oh, absolutely.
Just wanna pump iron to and get a pump going.
How come it never made its way into the Afterimage, even for a second, even for like a single, you know, just to see what the reception was going to be? Because, man, I think some of your fans would go pretty wild if you put out something like the Afterimage like type of instrumentals with your crazy vocals. I think you might have something there. I know you just finished telling me you're going to start moving away from that, but
Yeah.
but damn, dude, I think maybe there should be 2 Afterimages. Just put out 2 albums a year. Just have one of them.
I don't know. Heavy. I guess with the Afterimage, like, although we try and push the envelope and really, you know, we have so many different genres and styles going on. There's a few things that I wanted to keep kind of consistent, and that was the way that the vocals were, so you could kind of tell that was the band that we were. And that's why I thought it would be good to maybe have a side project where I could just unleash all the different things that I can do as well, and just kind of make them work within the context. But maybe in the future I might screw around with some layers that are a little more brutal or whatnot. But you never know.
Yeah,
that's kind of the mindset I had with it.
I think it could be cool. But, you know, on a serious note, it's really cool that you have that sort of outlet, especially if the Afterimage is going to trend a little bit softer from here on out. Do you think that... I mean, it feels like heavy music is still in your heart if you're deciding to make this, you know, brand of sacrifice even while the Afterimage is getting a little bit softer. Do you think that passion for the heaviness will still be there no matter what?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's I mean, I started listening to heavy music, and I was a guy that came from a hip hop background. You know, being kind of like, as you could say, like a mixed kid. You know, I have like my mother is South African, and my dad's Caucasian. But my dad came from like almost like a new wave or classic rock type background. My mom was more into like gospel and pop and R&B and stuff like that. So I grew up playing basketball and listening to hip hop, and then kind of got into bands like System of a Down and Linkin Park, and here in Canada we have this band called Billy Talent, which was a big thing when I was in like 7th, 8th grade. And just I kind of put that on the back burner for a bit, went back to the hip hop, and then I came back and started listening to like As I Lay Dying and Bleeding Through, and started getting to like some of the hardcore stuff like Terror and Hatebreed, and so it was just I just had a connection to the heavy music that I didn't so much have with the hip hop stuff, and the hip hop stuff is more, I thought I should be listening to this kind of music, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. So it's always going to be there. It's a part of who I am, and I'm never going to give it up. But I want to go with what my heart is saying, and like I said, I'm never going to go to the point where we're just like doing a complete 180 on our sound or anything like that. We're always going to make sure that we're not going to alienate our fans or whatnot. But I really think that although this stuff's going to be lighter, it's not going to be without moments that kind of make you want to groove or make you be like, whoa, that was insane kind of thing. You know what I mean? The stuff that the Afterimage has always had there, you're still going to feel those vibes. It's still all going to be there. And I think overall that the listeners right now, I think they'll be able to enjoy it.
And I think the listeners who, even if there are some who might complain, you know, they wish the Afterimage was still a little bit heavier, I think the fact that you have this whole other side project, it's like, dude, just go listen to me absolutely kill it over there. And and I think, you know, they'll be happy because then you have 2 bands that you're fronting and putting out music in. So anyway, I think that's pretty great. That is basically all the questions that I have.
All right.
Sorry it went so long. I know we got pretty involved.
Oh, not a problem, man. That was a conversation, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I know we got pretty involved in a couple of those, even some off-track ones. But Is there anything that you would like to say to the fans as sort of a closing note?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So the first thing is that I just want to thank everyone. There's a lot of people that I've been seeing in the comments who have been around since Formless, and to me, that's honestly mind-blowing that you would care about some goofballs from Toronto that make some progressive music, and to me, it's honestly humbling, and I can't thank those people enough. And I also can't thank enough the people that are now tuning in for the first time. You know, it's crazy to think how much reach the internet might have, but also I'm all about meeting new people that are passionate about music and want to have a conversation about it, just like we're having right now. Just want to push things to the next level and get things ignited and popping in the metalcore scene again. And the second thing I wanted to say is I just want to shout out some of the bands here in Ontario that I would really like maybe some listeners of this this show here to check out. There's a band, they're local, they're called Lungless from Pickering. I think that this band is going to be one of the next big things, and you should jump on the train now. They're called Lungless. Okay. Second band, they're called Falsifier. They're from Windsor in London, and they're an incredible band. And obviously, as well, we have our good friends that are from our same hometown from Barrie, Ontario. They're called The Parallel. They're also a very technical metalcore band. And if you like us, you're definitely going to like The Parallel. So I just thought I would just shout out a few of our homies and let people know that there's more than just the Afterimage here in Ontario. There's a lot of great bands that are up and coming as well.
Cool, man. That's really cool of you to, you know, shout out like that. All right. I mean, I think that's the end of it. Everybody who's made it this far listening, you know, make sure you check out the Afterimage's new album. It's called Eve, and yeah, let us know what you think. Kyle, you guys going to be touring anytime soon?
It's all dependent on how things go over with this record. If not, we're going to jump right back into making the next album, and we're going to go from there. So, but I do hope we can hit the road, because I honestly want to meet every person that has been supporting us here today and in the past and moving forward. Honestly, my end goal is that I wish I could be on the road as much as possible, because this is what I want to do. If it doesn't work out that way, then it's all good too. But I just want to thank everybody again for supporting, and hopefully we can see you sometime soon.
Yeah, guys, even more than just checking out the album, I think a lot of people don't realize how much first week sales matter. So if you check it out and you like what you hear, be sure to support these guys and pick up a copy, because Kyle, am I right in saying that a lot of touring is based off of first week sales?
Oh, 100%. It's almost like it's the lifeblood of a band.
All right, guys, so you definitely heard it. Any band you want to support, especially Afterimage, I mean, you gotta, that first week sale is really how you're going to get to see them live. So, you know, it's the same as a Netflix subscription for a month. It's not that much. Just don't go to Starbucks 2 times, and, you know, you'll have your $10 to get it. Want to say a huge thank you to Kyle for making the time on this Friday night. I'm about to go listen to the album all over again and write my review of it. So actually doing this interview beforehand, really cool, really cool. I'm hopefully going to get to mix in some of the things that I learned tonight into it, and then you know, share some of those insights even more widely. So thanks again, man, and hopefully...
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, hopefully when this next album comes out, we could do this again.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, man. Talk to you later, and good luck and everything.
All right. Have a good night, man.
All right.
Take care.
See ya.